Good evening, dear soul. Welcome back to Whispers of the Sages. Tonight, we return to the water. Not to swim, not to search, but simply to float. This is your soft landing place. A quiet shoreline where nothing is asked of you except to let go. Let go of the questions. Let go of the pace. Let go of the self who always needs to know what comes next. Here, there is no current pulling at your thoughts. Only the gentle presence of now. So thank you for allowing this story to flow through your night, like a stream winding through the valley of your rest. And thank you for trusting stillness to be your companion, even if just for this one sacred hour. Tonight's story is not about oceans or storms. It's about a river, a simple one, born high in the mountain, eager to prove itself. But as it twists and tumbles across time, the river begins to see that its strength was never in how fast it moved, but in how gently it could listen. If your breath feels tired, if your spirit is restless, then this is your story. The story of the river that learned not to struggle. So now, close your eyes. Let your body settle like pebbles in clear water. Let your thoughts drift, not to disappear, but to become quiet. With every breath, feel yourself soften. With every pause, feel yourself return. You are not late. You are not lost. You are already here. And so, let us begin this journey of water, of wonder, of coming home to stillness. This is the story of the river that learned not to struggle. High in the folds of the mountain, where silence still sleeps beneath layers of snow and cloud, a small spring broke free. It was not born with ceremony. There was no thunder, no witness, no applause. Only a trickle, a beginning. But the spring did not see itself as small. It pulsed with a hunger it could not name. I must go, it whispered to the rocks. I must move, flow, reach, somewhere. And so it began. First a thread of water, then a stream, then a restless ribbon carving its way down the slope. It was full of energy, full of questions. Where is the ocean? How far must I go? What must I overcome to be worthy of arriving? Every pebble was a challenge, every twist a test. And the little river faced them all not with grace, but with a rush, believing that to pause was to fail. It had heard stories, though none were told aloud. Stories carried in the echoes of older waters. That there was something vast at the end of the path, a greatness, a merging, a home. But no one told it that the journey would also ask it to soften. That one day, its fierce current would tire not from weakness, but from wisdom. The river did not know. in its youth, that the rocks were not enemies, that erosion was not defeat, that in touching the earth again and again, it was slowly learning the shape of surrender. Instead, it rushed on. It pushed. It tried to prove it was strong enough, fast enough, worthy enough to find the sea. But even then, the mountain did not correct it. The sky did not interrupt. For some truths must be felt, not told. And so the river tumbled forward, eager, urgent, believing that it was the force of its movement that would lead it home. Not knowing yet that the ocean does not require force, only arrival. Not everything that refuses to move is your enemy. Sometimes, the lesson is not to overcome the obstacle, but to outgrow the need to fight it. The river, still young in spirit, curved its way down the mountain like a silver ribbon unraveling from the hands of the sky. It danced through meadows, laughed around bends, carved its name into soft earth. It believed it could go anywhere, if only it pushed hard enough. Then came the stones. Not the playful pebbles that giggle when water brushes past. These were different. Large. Silent. Unyielding. They sat in the river's path like monks in meditation, unbothered. Unmoved. Unmoving. The river crashed into them. It did not ask. It demanded. Move, it roared. I am flow. I am force. You cannot stop me. But the stones said nothing. They did not resist. They simply remained. And that infuriated the river. So it surged. It stormed. It struck harder, louder, faster, sending up foam like flung words in a losing argument. But the stones stayed. And the river hurt. Not just in the splintering of current or the bruising of pride, but in the deeper ache of realizing that effort does not always equal passage. That not everything yields to will. That sometimes, force only fractures yourself. This was pain not of the body, but of resistance. The kind that settles behind the ribs when life refuses to match your pace. The kind that whispers, "What if the way forward is softer than you think?" The river did not yet understand. It had not learned that water wins not by breaking stone, but by embracing time. It had not yet discovered the Taoist truth. The soft overcomes the hard. The yielding overcomes the unyielding. But such truths cannot be handed to you. They must be felt, bone deep, through the wounds of your own insistence. And so, the river rushed on. Not out of wisdom, but out of weariness. Because sometimes, exhaustion is not failure. It is the first crack in the armor of ego. And that crack is where surrender begins. One dusk, when the sun was slipping behind the mountains like a soft sigh, the wind came to the river. Not loudly, not with command, but with a whisper, as if it had something too sacred to say aloud. The breeze leaned close and murmured, just above the ripple's ear, Don't resist. Just flow. But the river did not understand. It had not yet learned the language of softness. It still believed movement meant victory, that only those who surged forward could find the sea. "What do you mean, don't resist?" it murmured back, restless. "If I do not fight, how will I prove I am strong enough?" The wind did not argue. It had spoken its truth, and that was enough. Instead, it slipped through the reeds, danced along the water's skin, and vanished into the trees, leaving only the echo of a truth the river was not yet ready to carry. The river continued forward. It churned. It pushed. It clung to the belief that to reach its destiny, it had to overcome everything that stood in its path, even itself. But sometimes, a whisper is not meant to teach. It is meant to wait, like a seed that burrows in silence, trusting that one day, the soil will open. And so the whisper of the wind did not fade. It lived inside the river's current, humming softly beneath its roar, waiting for the day when the river would grow tired of struggling, and finally listen. At the edge of a clearing, where the wind carried the hush of forgotten dreams, the river came upon a willow. It did not stand like the others. While oaks lifted their arms in defiance and pines pointed like proud soldiers, the willow wept. Its branches bowed low, touching the water not with authority, but with tenderness, like a mother brushing the brow of a sleeping child. The river, still breathless from its rush, paused beneath the canopy of green whispers. And the willow spoke. Not in volume, but in wisdom. "I once stood straight," the tree said, its voice rustling through its leaves. "Tall, stubborn, proud. When the wind came, I held firm, I clenched, I swore not to move. But I broke." There was no bitterness in its voice. Only the soft knowing of something that had learned the cost of resistance. "Now," the willow continued, "I bow, I bend, I follow the wind's fingers. And I live." The river listened, not just with its ears, but with the aching places inside that still clung to the idea of winning. The willow, like the wind, offered no commandments. It did not say, "You must." It simply was, a living truth made of grace and green. In the teachings of Lao Tzu, they say, "The stiff and unyielding are the companions of death. The soft and yielding are the companions of life." And here was that teaching, not in scripture, but in bark and bough. The river lingered, not rushing, not resisting, just receiving. And as it moved on, it did not roar. It whispered, not in surrender, but in understanding. For perhaps, strength is not in how loudly you stand, but in how gently you stay. The river came to a land that did not want it. Dry, cracked, thirsty in a way that had forgotten how to receive. The sun beat down with no mercy, turning silver surface to steam. The river grew thin. Its voice, once roaring, now trembled into silence. It gasped. It dwindled. And in that shrinking, something inside it broke open. "I am disappearing," it cried. "I am not myself anymore." Its currents no longer rushed. Its edges frayed. The creatures who once played in its depths now hid beneath stones, waiting. And still, the heat pressed on. The river wept, not with sound, but with a vanishing. But the earth listened. Not with urgency. Not with rescue. Only presence. It cradled what remained of the water in its dry palms, not to hold it back, but to witness it fully. Even now, the ground seemed to whisper, "You are not gone, you are becoming." The river did not believe it, yet. It felt betrayed by the sky, by time, by its own weakness. But deep below, where light does not reach, the soil absorbed each tear and held it quietly, lovingly, as if to say, "Even when you do not flow, you still belong." In Buddhist thought, there is no permanence. All things rise and fall, not as punishment but as truth. This was the river's falling. Its forgetting. Its undoing. And in that undoing, it began to truly be. Not the powerful torrent it thought it had to be, but something more honest, more whole, more still. For even when water disappears, it does not die. It changes form. And sometimes, to become rain again, it must first become invisible. The river, thin and weary, reached the edge of the desert. It did not rush forward. It hesitated. For the desert was vast, endless, silent, golden and still. No valleys to curl into. No shade to rest beneath. Only sun. Only space. Only stillness. The river, shrinking into itself, whispered, "I cannot go through this. I will disappear." And the desert, old as stars, responded, not with pity, but with a voice like wind on dunes. "You are not water. You are the journey of water. You are movement. You are transformation." The river shivered in its shallow skin. "I don't understand," it said. "I've always been a river. I have banks. I have direction. I have sound." But the desert only smiled in silence. Because it knew. It had watched many rivers arrive full of certainty, only to vanish in despair. And then, to rise again as clouds. To drift, unseen. To fall, one day, as rain, far from where their stories began. To become what you must. The desert whispered, "You must stop clinging to what you were." The river was quiet. Deep quiet. The kind that comes not from stillness, but from realization that maybe identity is not a name carved in stone. but a movement traced in air. And as the heat lifted its breath, the river felt its body turning to mist. Not dying, becoming. And for the first time, it did not resist. For the first time in its long, tumbling life, the river let go. Not in despair, not in defeat, but in the quiet way a tired hand releases a stone it has held too long. It stopped thrashing. It stopped shouting. It stopped asking the path to make sense. And in that stillness, the world did not punish it. The world held it. The sky grew wide. The banks softened their grip. The twists and turns of the land, once seen as obstacles, became companions. Gentle hands guiding rather than blocking. The river did not ask, "Why this way?" It flowed. Not because it knew the way, but because it no longer needed to. In the old Zen stories, they speak of the sound of one hand clapping. A paradox. A whisper of truth that cannot be grasped with logic, only felt with presence. And that's what the river had become. A presence. No longer a force needing to prove itself, but a living question mark, moving through earth with grace. It wound around forests, curved into silence, danced through uncertainty like someone who no longer needed to arrive, because they had already become the movement itself. And in the deep bend of one forgotten valley, the river looked up at the sky and smiled. Because it had finally stopped searching for freedom. It had found something better. Peace. If this story is flowing gently into your heart, and somewhere inside you, something feels a little softer, we'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment below. Even just a word, or a whisper of how the river touched you tonight. And if you'd like more quiet stories like this, gently tap the subscribe button. Not to follow, but to return. Return to this quiet place. Whenever the world grows heavy, and you need a voice that doesn't rush you, we'll be here. Whispering. Waiting. The clouds gathered, not as threat, but as invitation. They stretched across the sky like open arms, soft and silent, waiting. The river, now more breath than body, rose. Not in pride, not in fear, but as mist, delicate, weightless, released from all direction. It had no more banks, no edges, no current to obey, just the sky. And in that rising, the river remembered what it had once forgotten. That to reach the highest place, one does not climb. One lets go. It drifted among the clouds, not as a traveler, but as part of their skin. A molecule in a memory. A rhythm within a breath. And when the moment was right, not rushed, not asked, the river became the rain. Not a torrent, not a flood, but 1,000 gentle drops, falling like blessings upon the earth. It no longer chose where to go. Each drop found its own leaf, its own root, its own hollow to soften. And in that scattering, there was no loss, only expansion. The river had not disappeared. It had become many. It had become everywhere. In the laughter of puddles, in the hush of forest moss, in the sleeping seeds now waking underground. Freedom had not come from reaching the ocean. It had come from dissolving the need to be a river at all. Just rain. Falling. Soft. Complete. In a distant land, one the river had never seen, yet somehow always known, the rain touched earth. It met soil not as an arrival, but as a remembering. And from that meeting, a stream was born. Not from force, not from effort, but from a quiet unfolding. It trickled through soft roots and stone, humming a song that did not belong to anyone. No name, no destination, no burden to prove it had once been vast. It simply was. The stream did not ask, "Where am I going?" It flowed. The stream did not worry, "What will I become?" It moved. No longer heavy with questions. No longer swollen with ambition. It wound through valleys with the ease of breath. It nourished without trying. It shimmered without asking to be seen. And in its gentle curves lived a kind of wisdom older than words. To exist is enough. To move is to trust. To return is not to repeat, it is to renew. The stream had once been a river. The river had once been rain. The rain had once been mist, rising from a place it had long forgotten. And yet here it was again, not as what it was, but as what it had always truly been. Flow. Life. Love. And it smiled, not with lips, but with the way light played upon its ripples. It did not need the sea. It did not need a finish line. It only needed this moment. And this moment was already home. For so long, the river had chased the ocean. Through valleys and storms. Through heat and drought. Through memory and forgetting. It believed the ocean was waiting at the end. That if it just endured, if it carved, collided, surrendered, it would arrive. But the stream, now soft and light as breath, began to feel something different. It no longer longed. It no longer looked ahead. Instead, it listened. And in that listening, it heard the ocean. Not as a distant roar, but as a rhythm, quiet and ancient, already inside it. With every ripple, with every shimmer, with every pause between movement. The ocean was not ahead. It had never been a place. It was a presence, a knowing, a vastness not found at the mouth of the world, but in the heart of the moment. The stream smiled. not because it had reached the end of its journey, but because it no longer needed one. The Tao says, the greatest revelation is the stillness before arrival. And this was it. The great truth, hiding in plain flow. You do not become whole by arriving. You remember that you were never not whole. The river had always carried the ocean within. In its surrender. In its softness. In its choice to keep moving without needing to understand. And so, it flowed on. Not seeking. Not striving. Only being. A river. A rain. A stream. A sea. One water. One life. One quiet freedom. The night wrapped the earth in silver. Not darkness. Not silence. But something softer. A hush that didn't silence the world, but invited it to listen. And in that hush, the river looked up and saw the moon. She hovered above, round and calm, floating in the ink of night as if she had never once fallen. The river stilled, not out of reverence, but recognition. They had met before. Not in words, but in reflections. And tonight, something ancient stirred. The moon spoke first. Not with a voice, but with light. You see me, she said, but you must know, I am only a reflection. I borrow my light from another. Without stillness below, I would remain unseen. The river listened, its surface softening. It did not try to ripple. It did not need to speak. Its very stillness became an answer. And in that stillness, the moon glowed brighter, not because she shined harder, but because she was received. You, dear river, the moon whispered, are my mirror. My truth cannot be seen in the sky. It lives in your quietness. The river blinked, a blink made of ripple, not eyelid. And in that ripple, it understood. All along, it had believed it needed to reflect something to matter. To hold light. To be useful. To be beautiful. But the moon reminded it gently. You are not valuable because you reflect me. You are valuable because you can. Because you allow space for what wishes to be seen. In Zen, they say, empty your cup so it may be filled, become still so truth may find you. And so, beneath the soft witness of the moon, the river stopped reaching. It did not perform. It simply was. And in that being, the moon smiled. Not with lips, but with light that finally had a home. The river grew quiet, but not because it had reached an end. There was no wall, no mouth, no grand finale where it vanished into the sea. It simply became still. Not as surrender, not as defeat, but as understanding. The kind that doesn't need to be said aloud. The kind that breathes with the trees and sleeps with the stars. No longer did the river rush. It did not carve or chase. It did not reflect or resist. It simply rested, yet in that rest, it became more alive than ever. Each ripple now held meaning, not because it moved, but because it chose not to. The fish beneath slept without fear. The wind passed gently, unprovoked. The moon above no longer needed to shine hard, she knew she was welcome here. In the Tao, it is said, "The highest good is like water. It nourishes all and does not compete." And this, now, was the river. Not noise. Not striving. Just presence. It had spent its whole life becoming a drop, a stream, a flood, a storm, a mist, a cloud, a rain, a silence. And now, no longer needing a name, it returned to the one truth it had never truly left: that nothing real is lost in stillness. In fact, everything true is finally seen. The river was no longer a river. It was the echo of movement, the breath between thoughts, the gentle reminder that even in stillness, there is flow. A small bird landed at the river's edge. It had flown far, through cities, through storms, through silence. Its wings were tired, its throat dry. It lowered its beak and drank. Not in fear, not in haste, but with reverence, like someone returning to something they didn't know they had missed. After a while, the bird looked up and whispered, "Your water heals." The river smiled. But it didn't ripple. Its smile was not seen, only felt. "Because I have learned," the river replied, "how not to resist." The bird tilted its head. Curious. Quiet. So the river continued, not with pride, not with teaching, but with the softness of someone who knows pain and peace by name. "I once fought every stone. I rushed. I roared. I tried to be more than I was. But healing did not come from strength. It came when I stopped needing to push. When I stopped demanding a path, and began trusting the flow." The bird nodded slowly. It did not speak again. It did not need to. It simply took a breath, one deeper than before, and flew on. But this time, its wings did not flap with strain. They moved with grace, with lightness, with something unspoken, now remembered. And the river? She did not hold onto the bird's presence. She did not chase its shadow. She only flowed. Quietly. Fully. Free. Because she knew. What is nourished will return in ways you may never see, but always feel. And so, it rained. Not like before, not like the stormy cries of a sky uncertain of its purpose. This rain was quiet. Certain. Like an old friend who no longer needed to be invited in. The river looked up, and without resistance, began to rise once more. She turned to mist. Mist turned to cloud. Cloud turned to rain. The same dance, but not the same dancer. This time, she did not grieve the leaving. She did not cling to her shape. She did not whisper, "I don't know who I'll be." Because now she knew. That identity was not lost in change, it was found there. No longer afraid to become something else. The river softened into the sky with grace. And when the rain began to fall, it did not fall in search of direction. It fell in trust. In joy. Each drop held no destination, only presence. It kissed the petals, the roofs, the roots of mountains. It joined puddles, crept into the cracks of dry places. And though the world called it rain, it did not call itself anything. It simply was. Becoming again. Without fear. Without beginning. Without end. And if you stood beneath it, arms open, heart still, you would not hear it shout. You would not feel it demand. You would feel it remember. A memory of surrender. A memory of movement. A memory of how to be free, again. The story returned to where it began. To the mountain's breath. To the first trickle of water in the stone. But something had changed. The river, once eager to conquer, no longer hurried. It no longer fought the stones. No longer questioned the turns. No longer feared the drought, the heat, the sky. It flowed, not with purpose, but with presence. It did not call itself wise. It did not call itself healed. It simply flowed. And in that flow, it touched everything. The leaf resting on its back. The moon gazing into its heart. The bird who drank from its stillness. The child sleeping with a window cracked open, listening. The dreamer who needed no answer, only the gentle sound of water moving through the dark. The river did not need applause. Did not need to be remembered. It only needed to be part of everything. And so it smiled. And flowed through the sleeping world. And that was our story for tonight. A gentle journey through the whispers of water and wind. Meant not to teach, but to soothe. We hope this tale flowed softly into your heart, helping your breath slow, and your body melt into rest. If this story brought you a little more peace, you can gently tap the like button, as if lighting a small lantern to say, "Yes, I was here, and I needed this." And if you'd like to journey with us again, don't forget to subscribe to Whispers of the Sages, where every story is crafted to carry you deeper into calm. Share this video with someone you love, so their night may begin with ease and end in peace. Sleep well now. Dream softly. And we'll meet you again in the next whisper.